C4, Cellucor, and Extend. Use the code Clydesdale to get 20% off at checkout at c4energy.com. On Clydesdale Media, where we bring you the widest array of content here on our YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notifier so you're the first to know when new episodes are available. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Paige.
I have water.
Probably better for you.
But
we were talking before I got on air. First of all, I am with the 18th fittest woman in the world, multiple time CrossFit Games athlete, rogue participant, all those things. This is her third time on the show. We're just going to kick back, relax, kind of chat a little bit about her season and whatever else happens to come up. With that, before we were getting on the air, we were talking about circadian rhythms kind of in a weird way, and how I used to be a night owl. Business world got me into early morning times, and then now I am working from home, so I'm more the night owl again. And when I go to events, that is a life-altering change for me now, because to be at the events and to cover the events, you have to be there super early in the morning, especially the games. Like, I think I'm up at 5 a.m. every day at the games. Other events we can sleep in a little bit more, but then like at the games last year, our wrap-up shows were at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And then
That's
I'm
late.
up again at 5 a.m. and heading off for my day.
Yeah.
And you asked a question.
Yeah. Like, what is a day in the life? Like, obviously it's probably sitting behind a computer a lot of the time, but you know, the media moguls that are in our sport, Marston and Heber, what is a day in the life besides the, really cool videos that you guys are putting out? That's my question. Everyone wants to see the day in our lives. So
it was really interesting. Like at the games this year, I'll just go with the games because it's kind of what everybody probably knows. You're there early. We actually, because of some changes in the way that CrossFit handled media, I had the opportunity to get content creators on our team this year. And we were in the middle of doing a documentary of the games. We followed 10 athletes through the season last year. 4 of them made the games. And then we're documenting how their experience went at the games.
that's
And
cool.
so it's getting the team together, making a plan of who's getting who out on the field so that we have content from everything that's going on. I think what's interesting is with the new season next year and the games being at one location, it's going to be way easier for media.
Mhm.
So yes, a lot of my time is behind a computer collecting all the stuff that's coming in, but I also like to go see the events. So as an analyst, I can give a perspective of what's going on. And so you're running. It's either sitting or running. And so you're running to North Park, then you're running back to the media room, which is where the athlete warm-up area is. It's just upstairs.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're running back there, then you're running to the Coliseum, and we can't go in like the normal spectators. We have to go back down into the parking lot and around to the back and in the back door to the Coliseum. So you go in there, and then you have to wait for them to give you a ticket to be able to sit down. And what's really interesting is I always sat beside the Misfit crew.
It's a good crew.
It is. They are awesome.
Good crew.
And so we got to hang out for most of the games.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know. I mean, like the media, our coaches, you're not you're not, if you're not there just to spectate, you're working a lot. Like whether you're back and forth, it's not, you're not on your time. You're on your athlete's time.
Right. And then the only good Wi-Fi in the whole place is in the media room. Right. If you leave that media room, you lose access to like decent Wi-Fi, 5G, whatever you're trying to use.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get done, we wrap up, we kind of have a debrief at the end of the day. Everybody goes home, and then I set up with my other crew like a wrap-up show. and you haven't eaten most of the day, so you're trying to grab something to take back to the hotel with you, and then you do your wrap-up show. You get that done. You have to convert it to audio, so it goes to, like, iTunes and Spotify and all that, and then when that's done, you finally get to go to bed. And then
And then you
back
have like a nap. Yeah.
Correct.
Then you get a nap.
Yeah, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No, I agree. I mean, you love what you do.
Right. It's where I feel the most alive.
Same.
Right.
Same.
So enough about us media people. We love what we do. And like, I got your Misfit crew. Like, we really got to know each other and they adore you.
Yeah, they're awesome. I actually got to spend the whole weekend at Rogue with Jen and Ted, who married couple. Ted does all of the media stuff. So he did mostly some videography at Rogue. And then Jen, Jen was my photographer, but she isn't much of a photographer. I actually still haven't seen her photos from Rogue. But yeah, so they came down for the whole weekend and we just had a small group of us. So it was just me, my boyfriend, Ben, and then my mom, and then Jen and Ted. So it was really cool. It was a lot more intimate. At the games, there's not as much, unless you have a, unless you want somebody like with a camera in your face all the time, which at the games, I personally don't know if I want that. But Rogue was more of like, athletes can, or, as far as fans of Misfit, fans of me, or whoever, they'll get a little bit more behind the scenes from Rogue, with thoughts on workouts and just emotions and everything that goes into it. So I'm kind of excited for what Ted puts together.
Yeah, that's another issue with media. Like, I signed up for Rogue. My wife ended up coming down with pneumonia, and I couldn't go to Rogue this year.
Yeah,
so
that's tough.
But their contract is so restrictive on what you can film on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what we get out of Rogue is a ton of behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
That I think like the community is almost starving for, right? Because we've all seen the events, we all see the slow-mo stuff, which is really cool. But getting to know the athletes is where I love it. And and so at Rogue, that's really your only choice as a media company.
Yeah. And you get to see that, like, we are athletes, we're fit athletes, but, we are humans. There is the human side of it, and we all deal with the emotions and, just the ups and downs of competing and, what you have going on in life during that time, stuff like that. So, it's cool.
Well, so Misfit's going to put out a thing on you for Rogue?
Yeah, so Ted is working on that. Sounds like it's going to be like a 2-part YouTube video. He actually sent me part 1 that's not, I think it's finished. It's just not posted yet. But I kind of get to see a sneak peek first. So, which is pretty cool. I've never had something like that done throughout my CrossFit career. So kind of exciting. It's been done before in the sport and whatever, but every athlete has a different perspective. Every athlete has a different journey. Every athlete has a different lesson that you can take away. So, I hope people watch it. I hope they can take something away from it.
I have been preaching for years. Everybody has a story. And you and I kind of talked about this in the Miami airport, but we didn't have a ton of time. Yeah. And every athlete has a story. And this is going to sound bad. I'm tired of Tia's and Justin's. Like, I've seen it a million times. Like, we talked to everybody that made it to semifinals. So many good stories, and we're not telling them. And if we want to grow the sport, you have to get to know the characters in the story.
Sure. Agreed. And, every athlete that's part of a training camp, whether it's Brute, whether it's Proven, whether it's Misfit, you have your media people there, and you have your outlets, your platforms that they're putting information out on. They're putting the athletes out on that platform, but not everyone follows Misfit, not everyone follows Proven, these social media platforms, and everyone follows Brute. So, it's just getting it out into different other, news platforms, whether it's yours, whether it's, Brian Friend or whoever it is, whether it's CrossFit themselves. So, I mean, I personally, being kind of more under the radar, I personally do wish that was, being done, but, it's not in my control either.
So here's an example. At the West semifinals, we had 5 athletes there. Only 2 made the games. What's a more compelling documentary, when everybody makes it to the games, or when you're on the edge of your seat waiting to see who's going to make it and who's not?
Yeah. True.
And you see the ups and downs of the weekend with everybody. And thankfully, the athletes were so open and raw with us during that time that we got to share that experience.
Yeah, that is cool. And I mean, from an athlete's perspective, it's like you're out there for yourself. You're out there to compete. You're out there to win, or you're out there to qualify, whatever it is. But it's, it's the people within your circle that you want to celebrate it with, right? It's the people who have been through the journey, whether it's, they're in the gym with you and working with you, whether they're remotely working with you, whether they're a significant other supporting you, whether they're a media platform supporting you. Like, you want to celebrate with those people.
It's funny you say that. Haley Maria was being interviewed by Coffee Pods and Wads at Crash Crucible. And she said the one thing every athlete needs is that one person at the end of their lane that believes in them more than they believe in themselves.
Yeah. Agreed. Definitely agreed.
And I loved how she put that. And I know, like, your mom has been with you since birth, and she proudly walks around events letting everybody know that she's your mom.
Yeah, I know. She's awesome. And, it's other athletes have done it too. Like, I'm 32, and my mom, my dad, they come to every sporting event that I'm a part of. Whether it was hockey, whether it was baseball or softball when I was younger, and now CrossFit. And they love to be there. They love to be the biggest, spectator, cheer in the crowd. So, I mean, I'm grateful for that. Not everybody gets that.
Yeah. And it's almost like your mom takes pride in being the best cheerer, the best.
Sure.
Spectator.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's fun when that little circle grows. Like, I have Ben, who I've been with him for 3 years. He's seen more ups and downs through my journey in the last 3 years than anybody else. I have my coaches. I have Gabe. I have my circle from our gym. The owner of our gym is a great friend of mine, is my best friend. So, it's fun when that circle grows, and the support is only intensified by that. And, it doesn't matter for them. It doesn't matter your placement on the leaderboard. They are there for you regardless, so that's always the one thing to remember when you're coming off the floor is, whether you had a good event or a bad event, or you qualified or didn't qualify, it's like, these people are still there. And that's more important to walk away with. And, just keeping that, you're not disappointing anybody, but yourself, I guess, for, if you don't do what you set out to do. But yeah, people are important.
So a couple questions from the audience. Bruce Wayne asks, where's Paige from? She's from the best state in
I'm from Pennsylvania. I live in, it's called the town Oliphant, but it's in Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area. So if you watch The Office, Scranton pretty well. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm from the other side of the state, but it's still a great state.
Just 6 hours to get over there.
Yeah. And then Corey says, I thought Paige was way younger than 32.
Yeah. Thanks.
She's
super
fit, people.
My bones tell me otherwise.
Yeah. So I want to kind of walk through the season this year. I'm going to do it in reverse, though. It's not how I planned it, but you already kind of talked about Rogue a little bit. So I want to kind of wrap that up a little bit. My favorite moment from Rogue, and I am not saying this just because you're on the show. I told everybody they had to go watch this. So I'm going to share my screen real quick because you posted on Instagram a video of it. This, whoop, not what I wanted. Here we go. This was your best event at Rogue, and this was the over-under, the duel.
Yeah.
The athleticism you showed in this event, I was in awe.
Thanks. I had a lot of fun.
You could tell. And the way you went over and under the logs, like you could tell who had athleticism, who did other things other than CrossFit in their life, and who didn't. My question about all this is, one, it was an amazing event. I wanted you in the finals so bad. I was rooting so hard.
Same.
And it was so close.
I know on the final one with the top 5, I kind of slipped up on one of the sandbags. So I lost my shot. It was like, 9/10 of a second or whatever it was. But I really I tried to black out and just go as hard as I could.
So my question to you is, if you look back at the history of the games, we tested like broad jump. We tested short shuttle runs, like real shuttle runs, not the ones we see in the open now, like zigzag sprints. That I haven't seen that for a few years. And I feel like we're getting away from testing athleticism at the games.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't look too much back at like the history of programming, or I haven't looked back at the history of programming. But yeah, I mean, there are things that, as an athlete, we call ourselves athletes, right? We call ourselves CrossFit athletes. But being an athlete, every sport has their little niche with that. And with CrossFit, it's ever evolving. So, I think it's fair to see changes throughout. But again, it is cool to kind of see things like this kind of circle back. I also, on that first, my jitters were so high during that event with the rope climb. Had they kept the rope climb in, I was calling my shot. I wanted to win that event because I thought that I really could. And then they took that out, and I was like, it's still a really good event for me. I'm okay with sandbags. I don't have an issue with those. But I shot out so hard in the first round that I completely, like some of the other guys did, some people fell, but I completely wiped out. Like I went so hard over the second log that I completely was airborne. I had no control, and I just fell like flat to the ground so hard. So again, the jitters were so high, like I was just, ready to go. So I was kind of happy that I was able to get those jitters out in the first one and then kind of, improve each round from there. So it was a really cool event. It's not the first elimination style I've been a part of. So back in 2019 at Brazil, it was an elimination event. And they're always fun for the spectators too. So they're cool to be a part of.
Yeah, I love watching them. My co-host Jamie and I kind of go back and forth on it because she's a really good athlete. She's in the masters division now, but she doesn't like it because the victor is rewarded with extra work.
Yeah, true.
Right. Whereas a spectator, I love watching it. Right. For her from the athlete perspective. So, but these are short events and you guys are built to recover fast. Do you think it had an adverse effect on you going forward by having to do extra heats?
I don't think so. I think with this one, it's quick bursts of running, and the sandbag is heavy. Yeah, but it's not like you're carrying it for distance or, it wasn't a heavy, I wouldn't say it was heavy on the central nervous system as much as like, what if we had to walk a yoke or do something, take it for distance or anything like that. So it was just too quick. If you recover properly in the back after the workout, I think you're fine. But that's on the athlete to do that.
So you played hockey for years. Hockey is a sport where there's a sprint and then a slowdown, then a sprint, that's kind of continuous. Did any of that experience carry over, or are you too distant from that experience for it to have an effect today?
No, I definitely think it plays into my strengths as an athlete. I am good for quick bursts. Interval work, I like interval work, but I'm definitely a power athlete. I'm an explosive athlete. I have that fast twitch in me. So that is all still very much there. It's there in my strength. It's there in my machine work, all that kind of stuff. The harder part is, developing my slow twitch work and getting, my engine, improvement there. So it's definitely there. And we definitely see it in training a lot. And we see it in competition a lot. But again, it's more of me needing to improve the other side of, that spectrum, the slower stuff, the endurance work.
I will say, as a longtime fan of yours, Rogue and the games this year were the best I've ever seen you on the floor.
Yeah. So, which is crazy, like for me to just look back at the stress from this year and working with, a back injury that was just very kind of, all over the place at times, and then just limited me so much on what I could do. It's crazy to look back at that and see what it kind of blossomed into for the season. So overall, it was a super successful year. I'm really grateful to have walked away with the lessons I've learned, and with the, as cliche as it is, with the resilience I've built through it. So yeah, I'll always look back on this year and see it as like a very special time in my life. So.
And we said earlier in the show, I was hanging out with your media crew in the stands at the games, and I'm like, this is the best I've ever seen her. And they were very, very much in agreement with that. And they see you all the time.
Yeah. Well, so they're up in Maine. I'm in Pennsylvania, so I really don't see them as much. Especially Ted, who's on the media side. He's not seeing like what's going on in the shadows with training, right? Like every so often I talk with him and we kind of catch up and things like that. But for the most part, it is just like, in the shadows of just training here at home. And you really get to showcase that when I get to go visit them in Maine, or when I am at a competition and they're there, or they're watching from home. So, there's a lot that goes into it that they also don't see.
So I was going to get into the back injury when we talked about semifinals and you squeaking in, because that was holy cow. But did the rehab from that back make you a better athlete in the end? Or was it something else that?
I mean, I think I was willing to do whatever it took this year. Like I was willing to do whatever it took to qualify. So that meant changing up a ton of training from April through until our semifinal. And that was working with my physical therapist and working with my chiropractor, all of the people in my circle. So a lot of changes happen there, and a lot of changes have had to happen with training. And I was just willing to go all in on whatever it took to bring my best self to semifinals. So it wasn't I didn't peak in the traditional form of peaking for semifinals. I peaked in a way that allowed me to continue to train while managing a back injury. I didn't do so much as like PT work through the time, like through semifinals training or through games training, because it was more of just managing whatever pain that I was dealing with. And we couldn't, there wasn't a true assessment on what exactly it was at the time. Like my PT definitely knew, or definitely had an idea, but it was things that we started to attack really hard after the games, when my body was able to come down and recover. Because, when you're training for the games, in a different mindset. You're in a different place with your fitness. And it was really coming down from that after the games. And then I've been doing PT twice a week ever since for my back, and have seen great progress, great improvement, and has finally gotten me back to pulling barbells off the floor, working into heavier strength work. So I'm excited. I'm happy about where things have, gotten from then to now. And now it's like, a great part of my week is going up to PT twice a week.
Are there changes that are going to become permanent into next season?
As far as training goes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I definitely think we learned a lot as far as the way Drew and the guys are programming for the games with Misfit. Typically, it's a heavy-ish lift every day. There's a linear progression, whether it's snatching, cleans, jerk, whatever it is, your power lifts as well. But I think as there are movements where I didn't have the confidence as much in my Olympic lifts, especially having them come out in an event at the games this year and it just being those two. So I wasn't super confident with those, but I wasn't able to get a lot of touches on it besides an empty barbell or 95 pounds or less on the bar. But as far as strength work, I think we're kind of taking away that, for me, at least, less was more because I was able to focus more of my time and energy into other areas that I personally needed to improve on. So I haven't really spoken with them, but I can see, kind of the pathway leading into the games for another year could be a little bit more personalized, as far as, I don't need as much strength work as, say, so-and-so does. So I definitely think it will bring some changes for next year. So, yeah.
Yeah. Corey in the chat is saying that he feels that I started seeing my PT twice a month, just to stay ahead of any potential issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, for me, being in the gym every day, it's a nice change of scenery too. And I love hanging out with my PT. His name is John. He's got such a great dry sense of humor, and he's always just in a good mood, and he loves what he does too. So he's passionate about it, and he's just a really great person to have, on my team.
So was this your first time at Rogue? Because they only have the last 3 years up.
Yep. Yeah, this was my first time.
So what was the experience like? Because when you go to Rogue, they overbuild everything.
It's
when you
awesome.
look at the strongman stuff, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's a very cool event to be at, whether you're spectating or whether you're competing. Obviously, I've actually only done it from the competing side. I've never gone otherwise. But it's cool that they have the strongman events as well, because it kind of, as a spectator, you're not just seeing two CrossFit events and kind of waiting for these big gaps in between. You're seeing there's kind of a nonstop flow throughout the day of strongman events, CrossFit events. So it's kind of a cool mix. And then Vendor Village was pretty big too. I was pretty impressed. It was really neat.
Yeah, it's almost, well, it's not as big as the games, but it just is a spectacle.
Yeah.
Just the event we just showed, that teeter-totter thing. I mean, there was no need to have a teeter-totter at the end of that.
Right.
But because it's Rogue, they can.
Yeah. That is the cool part about it. And you're always going to see new implements they biased really heavy, which we knew that going in. So for me personally, not an exciting time, just based on where I was at. But again, it's hard to say no to Rogue. So, I didn't want to say no.
Right. And because they take care of the athletes.
Yeah, they do a great job.
They are the premier competition that takes care of the athletes. And the big question is, what have you done with the guitar?
It is sitting next to another guitar in one of our rooms. So I think though, I want to make like a shadow box type thing with it. So use the shirt they gave us. We got some cool memorabilia from it. So unless Ben wants to start playing the guitar again and use a new one, because he does have one. But I will be hanging it up instead.
Yeah, I have one behind me that hasn't been played in years, and
Yeah,
I'm actually
it's
thinking
nicely.
about.
It has like the Rogue Invitational on it. It's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, it looked really cool. I loved when Dan Bailey actually took his and played it there in the area, and
Yeah,
he's awesome.
yeah, that was neat. Yeah, the athlete check-in was a really cool experience. So, but it is at the games too. I mean, that's something where like you really do feel spoiled.
Yeah, they're so good. They do a great job, and they're here in Columbus, Ohio, and so I love to support our
It's actually
local small business.
Yeah, it's actually, we were supposed to go to the Ohio State Penn State game the weekend before Rogue. So my cousin plays on Penn State. He's number 0. We were going to go watch and tailgate and just kind of, go back to my roots a little bit because I haven't been back in a long time. But then Rogue came out and I got the invite. So we kind of nicked that and just went to Rogue instead. Just too much travel.
Yeah, that's still salt in the wound for me. Being a Penn State fan and
I know.
living here in Columbus, I get ridiculed nonstop.
Well, it's funny. We have an athlete at our gym, a member. She went to Ohio State, years after I did, but now she's an alumni. She actually did gymnastics there. And every time she's in, like when you're in Ohio, the biggest thing is Michigan, right? Like the Ohio-Michigan rivalry. You never really hear about Penn State as much, right? But when I come home or when people ask where I'm from or where I went to school, and I say Ohio State, they're like, oh, Ohio State, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's kind of funny because we never thought of Penn State as a rival, so to speak. It was always about Michigan. It was always about the big Michigan weekend, especially around Thanksgiving. So I just thought that was a funny observation.
Penn State joined the Big Ten so late compared to like the original 10, because Penn State was number 11.
Got it.
So Penn State's rival, my whole childhood was Pitt. It was Pitt, Penn State.
Huh.
And then
well, two PA teams, that makes sense.
But yes, I only hear about it the week of the Penn State game.
Yeah.
Then once it's over, then they're on to Michigan.
That's fair. Yeah.
But for that 1 week, it's just really hard to live here. But what I was going to ask you, if you've been back lately, you wouldn't even recognize campus. Every time I'm driving by there, there's so much construction going on.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, there was construction a lot even when I was there 10 years ago. Oh my God, 10 years ago. Wow. That's nuts.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel that long.
There is, so on High Street and Lane, like that area is all house now.
Wow. Even like, wow. There are a lot of restaurants or like gas stations, like small little things around there. That's nuts.
Going down.
People just keep coming.
Yeah, it's crazy. And beautiful, like, because schools are trying to attract students left and right, and the housing is beautiful, but like lots of bars are gone now, and then across on the north side of Lane, it's a big B-dubs, like a massive BW3. That's the only thing
that's still there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Everything else around it's kind of gone, but that stayed.
Right. Yeah. I want to get back and, visit, but also like, Rogue is out there. You can drive out, buy some stuff, take it home and see the campus again and, kind of reminisce on it. That's what I wanted to do. So I really wanted to go, partly really why I wanted to go to the game. I want to go see my cousin because we haven't seen him play yet. My mom has, but we haven't yet. So we're working on that too.
Yeah. And when you were here, did you play hockey in the shot or did you play? Nope.
No, we were right across from St. John's Arena. So
Okay.
it's a small arena and it's not, you don't get like an NHL vibe, like arena like, but for us, it was great because the small crowd, you can still hear it. It's still loud. But over the last couple of years, they've won national championships. They've, been much higher up competitively. So they're getting a lot more recognition and they're getting a lot more fans to their games. So it's kind of cool to see, just the changing and coaching staff and what they're bringing to the table and the athletes that they're bringing in. It's really awesome. So it's cool to see that the program has developed and has evolved and has gotten to a point where, they're putting their name back out there.
Yeah. And I think with the Blue Jackets in town, like it's becoming more of a hockey town.
That's great. I love it.
Overall. So
yeah,
a lot more youth leagues, a lot more stuff like that going on here in Columbus. And so there's a lot of people, both the men's and women's Ohio State games, because it's hard to get a ticket for the Blue Jackets.
Oh, really? Are they that good too? Like, are they like good? Because back then they weren't that great.
No, they're not.
Okay, that answers it.
I mean, they had a short run where they'd make the playoffs. They made some runs in the playoffs maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, it always seems like something comes up and there's some turmoil going on, but it's like the in thing to do. And you have the soccer team and the hockey team are the only pro sports in Columbus.
Yeah. Right.
So those are the two kind of it things to do.
Sure. Yeah, I've gone to a few crew games as well. The MLS. I've been there back in my day. Stadium. Oh, do they? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is it still
downtown.
Out? Okay. Got it.
Yeah, so the Columbus, it's the hockey arena, and then across the street is the AAA baseball team.
Yep.
And then right beside that on the other side is the new soccer stadium.
Okay, got it. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Little sports hub.
Yeah. They call it the Arena District, and it's now that like the happening place to be.
That's awesome. I love Columbus. There's always something to do there. And it's, it's college, college town. It's not college town. That's what I liked about it.
Yeah, I'm glad I live here. I raised my daughter here. She moved back to Pittsburgh. She got a job and is in Pennsylvania. So it's funny how it all works out.
Yeah, but that's not too far away. A couple hours.
Yeah, not too bad. And they're moving into a house in January with a guest room. So we'll actually be able to like kind of go visit.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I want to go back now to semifinals, and I want to hit you with a question. You have a back injury coming in. You didn't really state that to anybody that I heard anywhere until after the event is over. Is there pressure to not I heard Justin Medeiros say this yesterday on a podcast. It's a double-edged sword. If you say something about it, everybody's like, oh, they're making excuses. If you don't say something about it, people are like, well, why weren't they just transparent?
That's a good question. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm so much in the spotlight as Justin is, right? Like he's won the games twice. For him to do poorly, people are going to ask questions and they're going to speculate and do all these things. For me, it was more of, I keep most things private regardless. So I'm not afraid to be vulnerable and share things. But it's more of like, if you ask me, I'll tell you. I don't like openly put a lot out there. Probably, I'm not super big on social media. I don't post a ton of stuff. It was more of like, I'm just going through this and the people around me know that I'm going through this and they're helping me through this. And that's the only platform I needed, was the people who were helping me. I didn't need to put it out there on social media and make it, like a woe is me thing, or it's just not who I am. It's just, I've never been that way. But if people want to hear my story, and, you know, I'm more of that kind of person who, if you talk to me and you want to hear it, I will tell you. So yeah, it was me internalizing it was just how I coped with it and how I was able to manage it without external stress, because I was putting enough stress on myself to begin with.
So one of my people, Cheryl Nasso, former games athlete, my nutrition coach, she filled in as interviewer at semifinals.
Yeah.
She interviewed you during semis, and I have that right here. And this is kind of the middle to end of day 2. And
I think this was after the snatch.
I'm trying to get you on weekend. And honestly, it's perfect because I called today moving day, and you are moving up the leaderboard. How are you feeling at the end of day 2?
I feel pretty good. That fucking hurt.
Yeah.
That hurt. But
Sorry.
second time I've ever done it, so
I was gonna say, and
it.
I was trying to get your video because man, it was sweet butter.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate it.
awesome job. I am super looking forward to you. How are you feeling about the workouts tomorrow?
I feel good. You know, it's gonna be a fight.
Yep, for sure.
And a little ding, like hot and cold on day 1.
Yep.
Hot today.
Yeah.
I gotta keep it going.
You
It's
got
the only
this,
way.
girl. You're a veteran in the sport, and look forward to seeing you compete tomorrow.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
so you predicted it at that point that it was going to be a fight.
Yeah. I didn't think it'd be that.
No excuses. No excuses. Just you knew it was going to be a fight on Sunday. And I think it's something like it was 20 points between the last qualifying spot, yours, and 15th place.
Yeah. There was a lot of people up for grabs on that.
So on Sunday, are you feeling that that pressure of it being that tight, or are you kind of like just blocking that out and pushing forward?
I'm not the math, like I'm not the numbers person. That's Ben and Gabe. So Ben, my boyfriend, and my coach, they spend a lot of time going back and forth and communicating on that stuff. And I'm only told what I need to be told. So like I'm told, like, if I need to place in a certain spot or be ahead of somebody, like I'm told that, and that is really all I need to hear. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to, like, last event, I'm going to give it hell. I'm going to give it everything I have. And that's going to place me wherever it places me. So toes to bar is notoriously like a tougher movement for me. I tend to do worse in those workouts more than any other workouts. So I was definitely nervous, and that's kind of that self-imposed doubt that I've already kind of put into that workout. My saving grace was a heavy sandbag carry at the end. So I just, you know, I already had pressure on myself as far as wanting to just do well enough in that event to begin with, that, you know, now it comes down to this final event that I need to do well in to make or break my season. So they usually, Ben and Gabe are the numbers, you know, they're crunching things in at the end of that event, waiting for the leaderboard to kind of tally up and all these numbers. None of us really had a perfect idea of where I was sitting as to where I finished in the event, because they don't post it. So we actually had Drew, who was back in Maine. He's watching the event, and he's doing his best kind of crunching numbers as to where everybody's placing. And I think he had me within a qualifying spot. And, you know, Gabe was also trying to crunch numbers, but just didn't have, you know, the lane of, like, the visual of seeing all the athletes. So he actually was super nervous. He wasn't even certain if I had made it. So yeah, it was, I think that alone, it took me 2 weeks to just recover from. So it was rough. It was nerve wracking.
So when that final event is over and they go back and start tallying, I swear to God, time stops.
It does. It's terrible. And I've never been in that position before. So I've never experienced it from like this side of it. And it's awful. And I'm sure, like, you know, my heart goes out to Annika for, you know, being on the other side of that, right? ultimately I wanted to qualify. I wanted to win. I wanted to get that spot. So I'm super happy, but man, you can have, I guess, two ways of looking at it. It can really kind of bring you down, or you can use it as fuel to the fire for, whatever's coming next for you. So knowing most high level CrossFit athletes, they're using it as fuel. We're all very like-minded in a sense. So I'm sure it's lit some fire in her too. But yeah, it sucked. It just, I didn't have the patience for it. My stomach was churning. It was not fun. And then I didn't even know how to react afterwards. I'm like, just this sigh of relief. And it's like, I just, I was just like, it deflated no matter what. And it was just obviously in a happy way and in an exciting way, but it's a lot. It was a lot of pressure. It's probably the most pressure I had felt in a really long time.
Yeah. One of the athletes we followed through the season was Carolyn Prevost, and she was on the wrong side of it this year. And she was that 15th spot that was only 20 points behind you. And it's so insane that you have this expanded semifinal and it comes down like 5 places or within 20 points.
Yeah, right. And it's such a competitive region to begin with, right? Like it's a stacked field, like no matter which way you look at it. And most of them are, right? Like there's a certain number of athletes there that make it a stacked field, but there's 6 or 7 that were guaranteed to make it, that only leaves a few spots that, I'm one of those that like, I don't feel like I'm a surefire in, right? Like if that weekend had gone more to plan, I would have been in a much more comfortable spot. So the ring muscle up event, I completely just blew up on it. I completely messed up, which put me in a really bad spot on day one. So it was more of, I had to respond back with that, and kind of, dig myself out of a little bit of a hole. But had that gone the way it did in training for myself, I would have been in a much more comfortable spot. But again, I don't feel like I'm a guaranteed spot at the games. I've never have felt that way. I've always felt like I've had to really, really fight for every single point. And I think I've always showcased that in the way I've competed ever since 2018 when I first qualified. So yeah, it's girls are really, really fit.
When there were some big surprises, like if you would have said Sydney Wells in, Brooke Wells out, nobody would have thought that.
Right.
Like it was just it was a lot of events where there were stopping points that you could get caught up in. And if you got caught, you could lose 20 spots on a leaderboard.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And that begs the question too, like, what is this next year? What is next season going to look like with some added athletes? Which, we still don't know the question. Are Haley, are Mal, is Tia going to be over here in the East? Like there's a lot of questions that we don't know yet, for the following season. And what does that do to our roster in our semifinal? So it'll be curious to see how it all plays out.
We go from 10% to 25% in the quarters.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning if a lot of those people sign up and you have one bad event, the damage that could do could be tremendous. And you have a semifinal now that's minus 20 spots.
Yeah.
So your keyhole is smaller to get in, and the pool it's picking from is much larger. I don't think all this has been thought through. And I'm not putting that on you. I'm saying that, Scott's saying that, not Paige. I don't think that those ramifications have been thought through.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I don't do the numbers. So I don't really know what it means as far as like what the season looks like next year for like what you're talking about. All I know is personally, I'm going to go and try and be on as high as I can on the leaderboard, because then that stuff doesn't affect me. Right. So that's the way I look at it. I don't really look into too much those types of details. For some, does it really matter? Yes. For me, does it matter? I don't know. It could, but all I know is I'm going to go and give my best effort in quarterfinals, in semifinals, and try to qualify in both competitions. Because then it doesn't matter. Then that stuff doesn't matter.
Do you get that attitude or that mindset from your years of playing other sports?
Maybe. I think I just, everybody can talk to the amount of changes that we've had in the CrossFit season. And it's like, well, they're making these changes. There's nothing I can do about it except compete. Which, there's obviously the PFAA. There are things that we can do, and those things are being done. But when it's all said and done, if this is the layout of it, this is the layout of it. So if I just go and compete and I can tack on high finishes, then it's not important as to 25% as opposed to 10%.
Okay. So I'm going to go a different route in a different direction. You have your best ever performance at the games. You go to Rogue, you get invited to Rogue, it's like you took the step into that next level of athlete. What does that do for your mindset going into 2024? And does it change your goals in 2024?
So after the games, it kind of took a long time to recover. I think I dealt more. I had said it, in a recent talk with Misfit. It took a lot more from the mental side of it this year. So the mental exhaustion was just much greater than it has been in the past. Having to manage an injury for the entire season, not just part of it. So after the games, you kind of come down and start getting back into training a little bit. And I was really kind of flexible with what I was doing. So I wasn't following programming. Sometimes I would just go really off the beaten path and, do something else that I just wanted to do. And I started getting into this mindset of, I'm not sure if I want to do this again next year. So when that was happening, I had a phone call with my coach, and I've talked with other friends and close people in my circle about it. And, the biggest thing was, well, we need to commit. So if you want to do this again, we need to commit. If you don't want to do this again, we need to commit. So, and come up with a plan for if I don't want to do it, okay, what is my path forward? And then Rogue came around. So Rogue was kind of a really good time because I was kind of in this, unknown, gray area of what I was doing. And I was using Rogue as kind of an indicator of whether I wanted to do it again or not. So, and a big part of it was, can my body handle the volume of training again? Can my body handle these heavier loads we know we're going to see at Rogue? So ultimately, if it was going to give me a green light and I was going to stay healthy throughout, I was going to do it again. And that's kind of where we're at now is Rogue was super heavy, a ton of heavy pulling from the floor, a 1 rep max deadlift that just kind of blew my mind. And I came out healthy and I came out on the other side and I took the time to recover from that. And it got me really excited to give it another year. So again, coming back to I need to commit. I have committed to another season at this. So that's where we're at. So yeah, I am looking forward to another year to build off of a really tough year, but a really successful year. So I think there's, a lot of improvement that's still left on the table. And there's a lot of potential still left on the table that I want to see if I can tap into.
Well, I personally am super excited that you're going to be back out there.
Thanks.
It's so much fun watching you. But I think that's I'm so glad you shared that because what we see is what's out on the floor. We don't see everything you have to go through in training to get your body there. And all I saw was Paige looks amazing out on the floor, right? The best she's ever looked. She finishes the best she's ever finished. But behind that, you were having doubts because of what it took to get you there.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you shared that.
Thanks. And it's more of like, you know, to be an athlete is to be vulnerable. Like you're putting yourself on the biggest platform of the sport. And that's for any athlete in any professional sport that they're competing in. So yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not afraid to go out there and fail. I'm not afraid to, I have doubts? Yes, but I'm not afraid to try. So I think that's the biggest thing that it comes down to.
So let me ask you this, with the doubt of your body and not committing the 24 season, did you not let yourself have confidence from what you accomplished? Was it hard to
don't hate me, but you're really breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your screen. Sorry. No. It's okay. It's just very choppy.
Having a little bit of an issue. So I am.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, man, it's still down. So I'm having a little bit of an internet issue. I don't know what's going on here. I'm only hit one bar. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you better.
Okay. So what I said is, because you hadn't committed, did that make it hard for you to enjoy what you had accomplished until you got done with Rogue, you committed, and now you can kind of look back and go, now I can take this and build confidence from it?
That's a good question. I think I felt like I was leaving something on the table after this past year, right? Like I finished 18th with some really tough circumstances that I had to deal with. Well, what would a healthy Paige have looked like at the games this year? You know, and that's kind of an unknown that I want to dig into this year. So the biggest goal right now is, again, making sure that I'm back to feeling 100% healthy with my back. So again, we're still working through that, but we're still far away from the season right now, that like strengthening these, you know, weaknesses as far as like, you know, asymmetry or whatever it is that's going on, any weaknesses in my body. This is that time to strengthen that stuff. And, you know, then you start to ramp up for the season, you know, kind of when the new year rolls around. You know, that's the fun of it, right? It's just, it's fun to like, I think for CrossFit athletes, there is an off season, but it's not very long. For other sports, you know, hockey is 5 months of the year. You have a long off season before you have to start ramping it back up. And it's just a different type of sport, a different type of level of fitness that you need to be at for hockey as opposed to for CrossFit. Like CrossFit is just, you need to be well-rounded in everything. And if you start to kind of, if you're not focusing on that and, you know, throughout your year, you know, you can really kind of fall behind. So, having committed, it's like, all right, well, I'm not falling behind. I don't want to fall behind.
So so what I'm hearing, and we're going to finish up here in a minute or two, but at Rogue, you weren't actually training for Rogue because you hadn't committed yet. So what you did at Rogue and how you looked at Rogue was not even training for that event.
Right. You know, and it's a lot of money on the line, right? Like it's still a high level competition that people are peaking for. They take a little bit of time off after the games and then they kind of start to keep that level of fitness, but, you know, get those heavy implements in there and train. And I still had kind of a last minute invite. So when I had first agreed, like there was doubt if I was going to actually be able to compete there with my back and based on what they programmed. But ultimately it was, all right, well, let's just see if we can get under a heavy barbell within these 2 to 3 weeks that we have before Rogue, and we'll go there and give it what we got. So, and it's not that I wasn't training, right? Like I was still hitting some conditioning. I was still doing my endurance work. Like that's kind of just stuff that I think I enjoy seeing the progression of it. I enjoy getting better at those things. I enjoy, you know, doing rowing for weeks at a time and seeing my split numbers just go down and down. So that's just a rewarding feeling. And that's something that I've always enjoyed. It was the process of it. So not that I wasn't training, but I definitely wasn't training specifically for Rogue. I was training specifically to get my back to 100%, which is kind of, still where we're at right now.
Corey, this is back when you were saying you don't look at yourself as a lock for the games. He said, I would think that's almost an advantage, thinking that I have to do everything I can because I don't think I'm a lock.
Yeah. And I'm sure, I've heard Matt Fraser interviews where he doesn't think he's a lock. He's the best you've ever, it happens to everybody. So even if you are guaranteed a spot, you're still like, well, shit, I need to give it everything I have. And, you want to show how fit you are. You want to showcase that. You want to represent yourself well and do it well on the leaderboard too.
Any plans for any other comps this year, or are you just going to dial it in training wise?
So considering we're doing Wadapalooza as a team of 3. So I'm doing that as a team of 3 with some misfits. So that'll be fun. I was considering doing it individually again too. I did that last year. I did both indie and team. And originally I was like, I'm just going to do team this year. And then as I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, I'm going to be down there. Why don't I just do both? And then, and then I had a call with my coach actually last night, and we got talking about it more and just realistically thinking about it. I've done Wadapalooza every year for like 4 or 5 years now. So I think I more so want to just go and have fun and do the team of 3. And just from a health perspective too, it's like, I don't need to beat my body up for 4 days in a row based on where I'm at right now. I'll probably likely be 100% healthy by then within the next 2 months. But again, is it still worth it for the longevity of the season? That's kind of what we're thinking about. So he kind of put a little bit more perspective back into it for me, which is what I needed to hear. So just team for Wadapalooza. Just have some fun for those 2 days, be in the sun while it's miserable in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's the best part about Wadapalooza is the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love hearing that the athlete, the competitive side of Paige is still there and wants to compete, but she has a good circle around her to temper that a little bit and say, hey, we have bigger goals.
Yeah, true.
Well, this has been a blast. I want to thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And we will see everybody next time on the Clydesdale Media Podcast. Bye, guys.